We can see then that hatred enables social groups to define themselves in comparison to others. The view of those outside of their group in a collectively negative, hateful, and threatening light allows a specific group to gain a self-definition and a sense of identity. It is an identity and definition based on negation. I am not what I hate. When discussing the history of anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, the other is clearly defined, as the objects of hate are always the Jews. The perpetrators of hatred, however, are varied, crossing periods, cultures, religions, and ideologies. Many of them even viewed and still view the Jews as ultimate others, without being exposed to Jews at all. These features of anti-Semitism join others in characterizing this phenomenon. Let's hear more about the characteristics of anti-Semitism and examine how they distinguish this form of hatred.
All prejudices differ from each other basically because of the different contents those prejudices have. They can be expressed in similar ways, so there are various rhetorical and linguistic means to express hatred, or also in caricatures or comics or other visual semiotic means, but the contents are the most important part. And in this way, anti-Semitism is certainly quite unique because it covers a whole range of different stereotypes. Some of them are very old and some of them are new. Actually, what is quite interesting is that you have very contradictory stereotypes. You have sort of the communist, the revolutionary, and you have the capitalist, the rich Jew. You have the intellectual who's sort of thinking about how to upheave and destroy and change society. On the other hand, you have the greedy Jew who's only after your money and basically who only trades, who doesn't really work. So my theory about anti-Semitism is what I call the Judeus ex machina, which means whenever you need an enemy image, you can produce one by instrumentalizing any cliches about Jews. And that seems to work very well right now, that whenever you need some kind of cliche and stereotype, it's like if you would grab into a big bag and you just pull out whatever suits this kind of political function.
Not to in any way diminish, to denigrate, to relativize the hatred of blacks, the hatred of Native Americans, the hatred of other forms of communities. But the fact is that not only is anti-Semitism the oldest, longest hatred, but of course that would not be much of a distinction, though it would be a fact. What distinguishes anti-Semitism is not only that it's a prejudice, a stereotyping, a demonizing of Jews, something about the fact that Jews are unpleasant, that they smell, that they're dirty, right? These are said about all kinds of groups, that they're involved in dishonorable behavior. But the issue of anti-Semitism is connected to metaphysical theories. It's very interesting that the origin of anti-Semitism is Christian theology. The Jews are a deicidal people. That's a metaphysical issue. There's God and his enemies represented by Satan, and Jews are children of Satan, and therefore Jews fight against Christianity. They fight against the salvation brought by the church. In the modern world, again, you have the idea that Jews are an international conspiracy. This is a doctrine, a philosophical, political doctrine about how Jews operate to control space and time. Today, in the modern world, again, it's metaphysically charged. The Jews are accused of all kinds of profound constitutional behavior that's more than improper. It represents a kind of effort to dominate the world, a kind of effort to defend their self-interest by taking advantage of others. These attitudes, these metaphysical, ontological, psychological attitudes, you don't find in other hatreds. When the communists dislike the Jews, they don't attribute to them only that they're dirty and ugly, but they attribute to them the idea that they are the force of capitalism par excellence. So there's something very special about the nature of anti-Semitism, which goes far beyond merely the dislike of the unlike, which is the usual definition of xenophobia.
There is a moment when Jews appear as quasi-non-real human people in the mind of some other people. There is a moment when Jews appear as evil or as devil, both of them. There is a moment when, if you want to understand the world in which you live, the society in which you are, the times in where we are, you don't find any, the people that are anti-Semitic don't find the good solution, the good answer, until the moment when they discover that there is something coming from devil, which is Jews. That is to say, something which does not appear in a visible way, something that nobody can touch, not real Jews that you meet in the streets, but a mysterious power. And at that moment, really we are at the core of anti-Semitism and violence towards Jews.
Anti-Semitism is a riddle. It is hard to explain why a cultural tradition would become so fixated on a particular group of people as a source of its problems. Now, we know why in the Western cultural tradition this hatred exists. It's rooted in a religious rivalry. It's rooted in the sense that Christianity developed, that it had superseded Judaism, that it therefore had replaced it, and those people who clung to Judaism were dangerous to the faith of the people who had not, who had embraced Christianity. And thus these people were regarded as contaminating. They had to be kept at a distance. They had to be confined. We know where this tradition came from. But what is striking is that in the modern world, which is a largely secular world in the West, this hatred keeps morphing. It keeps shape-shifting. It shifts to other kinds of justifications. And that, I think, is the thing about anti-Semitism that I regard as different. The motive is protean. The motive keeps changing shape, but the hatred is the constant element. And as I said, I do believe that anti-Semitism is a kind of superstition. So to try to understand why people are anti-Semitic, one has to understand why are people superstitious. One of the reasons is, of course, because generations before them have taught them to be, have said that if you in fact want to ward off some event that you don't want to happen to you, you knock on wood. We all know that knocking on wood is not efficacious, and yet we somehow think that it's a safe thing to do just in case. With regard to anti-Semitism, there is this kind of fixation on these people as being hyper-dangerous, and thus they have to be confined or reconfined in order for our lives to be safe. There is no empirical rationality behind that. There is no demonstration behind that. It is a form of knocking on wood. And to explain it any further than that is, of course, very difficult because superstitions are almost impossible to account for.